so big that it did require federal intervention in the 60s.
We're joined now by the House Majority Whip, Congressman Jim Clyburn, the Democrat of South Carolina. Great, thanks for your time tonight, Congressman.
Thank you so much for having me.
What was your first reaction when you heard Rand Paul's views on the Civil Rights Act, and has anything that he said since during this day changed that first reaction?
No, nothing he said has changed the first reaction, which was absolutely astounding. I just could not believe what I was watching last night as I watched him respond to 14th Amendment questions with a Second Amendment answer. It was just incredible to me. And to hear him talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as if there is no 1968 fair housing law. I would like to know how he feels about that law. In fact, he wrote a letter, I understand, to the editor of his local newspapers opposing the fair housing law of 1968. What does he feel about the 1965 Voting Rights Act, that law that allowed me to be serving here in the Congress? I don't know that this guy isn't still parsing words by limiting his comments to one section of the 64 Civil Rights Act. It tells me that he's got problems with other laws that we have come to accept as a part of the American way.
Well, you know, his defense today seems predicated on this. This was not an issue. This is merely a red herring, a political ploy. He blamed Rachel Maddow for the interview. And then the letter to the editor that you mentioned from 2002, he said basically the same thing. I mean, the quote that I'll read this one again, read it once, but a free society, he wrote, will abide unofficial private discrimination even when that means allowing hate-filled groups to exclude people based on the color of their skin. Is that a red herring, or is this now a theme to a man's perspective on what's discrimination and what's not in this society?
Well, he was in the public arena with this attitude a long time, and I find it kind of interesting that other leading Republicans, to include the senator from my home state, have been out here pushing his candidacy, wanting him to be the nominee of their party for the Tea Party movement, to endorse him, for him to cloak himself in the Tea Party movement, set himself up as a spokesperson for the Tea Party movement. I think we'll now be getting a full picture of exactly what the Tea Party movement is all about. And so I think it's time for us to ask Dr. Paul what he thinks about things that have happened on Wall Street, because we had people doing oversight. What he thinks about what's going on down in the Gulf Coast, because we need oversight over oil drilling. He seemed to feel that his libertarian philosophy gives him the authority to push for a regulation-free society, a laissez-faire government, just people do as you please. This is the kind of stuff that got us in the predicament that we're in now, and I think that the people who voted for him should be asking for their votes back. The people who contributed to him should be getting their money back, because this guy is putting himself up as being something that I'm sure they had no idea that he was.
What is that? What word is apt to describe what he is that you're leading to?
I think that he is, in fact, a sort of laissez-faire government person. He calls himself a libertarian, but I don't believe he is that. I think he's something else, something that says people are allowed to do as they please, except he has now said that about 50% of his practice is Medicare. But he wants us to, he's criticized his opponent for being for health care reform, and wants to cut money out of the budget, but he thinks that we ought to keep the money there for doctors' reimbursement. That ought to tell people something.
Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, as always, sir, great thanks for your insight, and great thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more on the politics of this, let's turn to our own Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine, who mentions